How much inspiration can you fit in a small car?
Back in 2001, Chrysler continued its attempt to distance itself from its boring boxy car past by introducing the PT Cruiser, a tall four-door wagon with curvy 1930s styling. Although it was a huge hit at its launch, with many selling well over sticker price to meet demand, the attraction to its retro look eventually started to fade, leading to its cancellation by 2010, and sadly making its way onto many lists of the worst cars ever made. This is the story of the Chrysler PT Cruiser. This is my old car.
Can it have more than enough room for her, him, them? Yes. Chrysler PT Cruiser convertible, starting at $19,995. Chrysler. Inspiration comes standard.
Thanks for all the suggestions to review the PT Cruiser. And again, thank you for the great stories you have sent me about your old cars. Don't forget to also check out my community page to vote on and get clues for upcoming episodes. The concept for the PT Cruiser was first revealed to the public as the 1997 Plymouth Pronto. Yes, what would eventually become the Chrysler PT Cruiser was originally intended to be a Plymouth. Back then, Plymouth was struggling to emerge from its image of just being cheaper rebadged versions of other Dodge and Chrysler cars. Their first attempt to reinvigorate Plymouth started with the Prowler.
Well, it's not exactly for everyone, is it?
That's kind of the point.
And if you look at the front end of the Plymouth Pronto concept, it's not hard to see the family resemblance. Although the future PT Cruiser's rear hatch looks more like another odd Chrysler concept from 1997, the CCV, which was clearly inspired by the Citroen 2CV. A second Pronto concept, called the Plymouth Pronto Cruiser, was revealed in 1998, designed by Brian Nesbitt, who joined Chrysler just 2 years earlier at only 27 years old. This concept later evolved into the 1999 Pronto Cruiser that showcased the final look of the new car. Although Chrysler CEO Bob Eaton was unimpressed, Chrysler's head of global product development, Bob Lutz, was betting big that the positive response to the retro-styled Prowler, as well as other retro cars like the Volkswagen New Beetle that entered production in 1997, would result in big sales for this reimagining of a merger between a 1930s cargo truck and a hot rod. Brian would later take the same basic design with him to General Motors a few years later, creating the Chevy HHR, which was built from 2006 to 2011. With the Plymouth brand officially slated to end by 2001, the new car would have a Chrysler badge, but it still needed a name. Although the Cruiser portion of the name most likely was taken from the second Pronto concept.
Isn't that pretty?
Oh, yes.
There are multiple suggestions on how they settled on PT. Chrysler announced at its launch that PT meant personal transport.
Chrysler PT Cruiser.
Although others say PT originally stood for Plymouth Truck, since the car originally was intended to be a Plymouth, and since the car's interior volume and ride height allowed it to be classified by the NHTSA as a light truck.
What kind of car wash is this?
But in the end, it was most likely named after the car's underlying platform, which was a heavily reworked version of Chrysler's Neon. The Neon's platform was known as PL, so the modified version had the L changed to a T for tall, becoming the PT platform. Regardless of the name, the automotive press was seriously impressed with Chrysler's retro wagon, with Car and Driver adding the PT Cruiser to its top 10 list for 2001. That same year, Motor Trend magazine awarded the PT Cruiser its Car of the Year, and the overall automotive press named the PT Cruiser the North American Car of the Year for 2001. Their popularity even led them to serve as taxicabs in Japan, serving the Maihama Resort near Tokyo Disneyland between 2002 and 2007. Unlike the Prowler, which by its very design had zero practicality, the PT Cruiser was intended to be just the opposite. It had a high ceiling offering plenty of headroom for tall drivers, a large hatchback opening with a low liftover height, a multi-level cargo shelf, and the back seats and front passenger seat could all be flipped, folded, or even removed to increase cargo space. Chrysler did consider a panel truck version, with no rear doors or seats and a wood floor, but it never went beyond the design stage. And, unlike the Prowler, the PT Cruiser was also to be sold outside of North America, including a right-hand drive version. But it still mimicked the Prowler with its retro-themed triangular hood and grille, and large flared fenders. But what really set the PT Cruiser apart from any other Chrysler product, or any other car for that matter, were the factory appearance packages that were meant to further emphasize the whole retro theme. Many Prowler owners added aftermarket flame decals to their cars, so Chrysler decided to offer their own version for the PT Cruiser, with varying flame colors to match the color of the car. There was even a Woody package, with vinyl wood trim along the doors and rear hatch, which, not surprisingly, has not aged all that well. Powering the PT Cruiser in North America was a Chrysler-designed 2.4-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder gasoline engine. although 2-liter 4s and a Mercedes-built 2.2-liter diesel were available in other markets. The car's taller size meant that despite the small engine, fuel economy wasn't great, usually in the mid-20s in terms of miles per gallon. But since it met the NHTSA's criteria for a light truck, its gas mileage was far better than the Dodge Ram pickups, helping to lower Chrysler's overall truck fuel economy average. But these small engines were preventing the PT Cruiser from reaching a key demographic, performance car drivers. In 2003, the PT Cruiser GT, also known as the GT Cruiser, was available with a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that was also available in the Dodge Neon SRT4, although with changes in the intake manifold and intercooler specific to the GT. The GT also had larger brake rotors and calipers, and 17-inch wheels compared to the PT standard 15-inch. The suspension was also updated, which dropped the car height by 1 inch, but it was still 9 inches taller than the SRT4, so unlike the SRT4, the GT Cruiser typically didn't show up on any racetrack. By 2005, PT Cruiser sales were dropping, so to help boost overall sales, a 2-door convertible model was first made available that year, with the original car designed only to ever be a tall 4-door wagon, a shape that doesn't easily translate well into a ragtop. The redesign was significant, changing from 4 fully framed doors to 2 larger non-frame doors, adding retractable rear side windows and a large basket handle brace behind the front seats, and the large rear hatch cut in half, with the roof storage sitting on top of the now diminished trunk space. Today, it reminds me a lot of another more recent car that never should have been made into a convertible, the Nissan Murano Cross Cabriolet, which was so bad, not to mention such a sales flop, that the Nissan makes a PT convertible look good by comparison. By 2006, 1 million PT Cruisers had been built, but sales were sliding each year. That year introduced the one and only refresh of the PT Cruiser, resulting in slightly restyled headlamps and the grille reshaped and no longer continuing below the front bumper. The refresh was meant to dial back the retro look a bit, as the declining sales numbers were attributed to the fact that its retro look wasn't all that attractive anymore. It didn't help that many buyers of the PT Cruiser skewed much older than Chrysler's expected younger demographic, although considering it was inspired by cars that were 70 years older, maybe more older buyers should have been expected. This was the biggest risk for any retro-style car back then, in that it simply couldn't be restyled without potentially losing the retro look. Another car dealing with the same kind of change at that time was the Ford Mustang, which had a significant retro restyle done in 2005, with a full redesign in 2015 that only hinted at the retro look it once had. The same couldn't be said for the 2006 Chevy HHR, also designed by the PT Cruiser's Brian Nesbitt, whose copycat 1930s looking wagon didn't last beyond 2011. In 2010, the PT Cruiser entered its final year. Where it once had at least 10 different trim levels, it now only had one trim level, called the Classic, with upgrades that were usually missing on the older, lower trim models. Only around 10,000 were sold in its final year, compared to over 100,000 per year between 2001 and 2006. What was once a car that racked up numerous automotive awards, its retro look had aged so poorly that it was often shunned, with only a few die-hard fans remaining.
But who cares if we blow it up, because it is, after all, crap.
It fared even worse in Europe, being awarded in 2013 by Top Gear as one of the 13 worst cars sold in Europe in the previous 20 years. Not surprisingly, there was no replacement for the PT Cruiser, with the Chrysler brand instead focusing on its sedans and minivans, which hasn't changed even up through the recording of this video in 2021. Chrysler as a brand is now only a small fraction of the total output now produced by parent company Stellantis, a far cry from what they once were, building cars in a new century that try to look a lot like cars from a century ago. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 80s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
You've sunk my cruiser.